to keep piling on this terrible news related to climate change, there is a new surge in power use across the United States that is threatening all of our climate goals. So since 2007, American energy consumption actually plateaued. Just flat energy demand from 2007 all the way to 2022.
Wow.
There just wasn't an increase. Well, why is this? The decrease in U.S.-based manufacturing. We didn't have to power these massive industrial plants, right? This is a whole transition of the economy where we just didn't have as many energy needs. Well, things are changing. Over the past year, electric utilities have nearly doubled their forecasts of how much additional power they'll need by 2028. Why is this happening? One, the growth of data centers. Data centers use a lot of energy. These things operate 24/7.
Yeah.
And they take a lot of power to run. In addition, there is an increase in U.S.-based manufacturing. Joe Biden has made it his priority to make things in America again with the CHIPS Act, with the Inflation Reduction Act, with the Made in America program, where the U.S. federal government is only buying goods made in the United States.
Yep.
These are things that are now increasing U.S.-based manufacturing. And there's a trade-off to this. And the trade-off is we need more energy to power everything. And we see growth rates in battery factories as one of the manufacturing elements that needs the most amount of energy to even do.
Yeah.
So we're in this terrible catch-22 situation where we're trying to build the green energy of the future, but we need fossil fuels to build it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it is a catch-22. And it's still, I think, the better path.
Alternative.
You need to get the infrastructure there so that all the building that you can do in the future, and there is research being done and development happening to make to electrify the means of constructing these battery plants and EV plants and things. But
the worry is we allow these companies to keep investing in fossil fuels, so they just get so embedded in fossil fuel production that they don't transition at all.
Exactly. The only way around something like this is almost to, like, if in the CHIPS Act and in the IRA, it was written in that, but you also have to build everything that we're allocating this money for with green energy.
Yeah.
Which would be, again, politically completely non-viable.
Right.
Never would happen.
Totally non-viable. Also, it might be technologically non-viable.
It is technologically, I mean, the combination of technology and the economy would make it impossible.
Yes.
Yes.
So peak demand for all this energy that's getting produced now or getting demanded on, peak demand in the summer is projected to grow by 38 megawatts nationwide.
38,000.
38,000, thank you, megawatts nationwide in the next 5 years. I don't know what that means, right? It's like adding another California to the U.S. energy grid. California. That is the state that uses energy the most.
I'm curious what percentage of U.S. energy was consumed by California.
Yeah, please look.
I'll figure it out.
That is how much we're adding onto our energy grid, okay? An unexpected projected growth. This is leading to a resurgence. What do we got?
California was accounted for actually less than I expected, about 5% of all U.S. utility scale energy.
Oh, all right. That is actually less than I thought.
Less than I thought. Still extremely
Still
significant.
crazy.
Yeah.
Less than I thought, though.
Yeah.
This is leading to a resurgence in fossil fuel plants, which is the exact opposite reaction that we want this to be having. Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia are all proposing to build dozens of power plants over the next 15 years that will all burn natural gas. Now,
I wonder if there could be a way to structure these markets so that we could pass the costs onto the builders of these data centers. These massive companies like Google, right, and Facebook that are pouring all of this capital and needing all of this data. But I can't think about it because that's not how electrical grids work, right? Like if the data center is attached to the electrical grid and a neighborhood nearby is attached to, or is plugged into an electrical grid, I don't know if there's a way to prioritize that the neighborhood gets that electricity instead of the data center.
I have no idea.
If blackouts happen for everything attached.
Right.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of thinking like data centers and all these other industries have to take the cost. But if we think about like the Inflation Reduction Act, right, you're building out all these battery centers. A lot of it is already subsidized by the federal government. And so there's going to be, and then we want to charge the company for these transitions, then that's honestly charging the U.S. taxpayer, which I'm not really against in theory.
What do you, I'm not sure what you mean, because the
So like if a utility company is like, all right, I need to build a new power plant and I need it to be fossil fuel. And the federal government's like, nope, you can't do that. You need to pass, or you talk to the data center, and the data center is like, you or the IRA funded thing needs to fund the transition of your utility power plant to a green energy one. And if that green energy producer or manufacturer is already getting money from the federal government money is really just going to the transition for the utility company at the end of the day, right?
But that's kind of what we want.
Yeah,
But
that's
because the federal government will take on some of the cost, but it will also, with this is how the IRA works in general, a lot of it will be taken on by the private data center developer.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. But we're seeing a rise in natural gas demand, or natural gas power plant construction, which isn't necessarily like the worst thing. It's not like it's coal, right? And I'm glad it's not coal, except in Kansas, where one utility has postponed the retirement of a coal plant to help power a giant electric car battery factory.
Yeah.
Which is so oxymoronic.
Yes. I also will say recent research just came out. This isn't a current event or anything, that methane leaks at natural gas plants are actually probably way worse than was previously predicted.
Oh my
Could
God.
be up to like 3 times as bad as was previously predicted. So natural gas could still be worse than coal, but based on the difference in methane leakage, because methane is such a more potent natural or greenhouse gas than CO2, it might not even be that.
Well,
much
now
better.
with Biden has done a new thing with the EPA where they're regulating methane leaks for the first time,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So is it possible that by regulating the methane leaks, natural gas could become much more safe?
Yes, it's possible if enforcement is good enough.
Right, if enforcement is good enough, obviously.
Yeah.
Experts have suggested if a wave of new gas-fired plants get approved by the state regulators, it is game over for Biden administration's 2035 decarbonization goal. That's it. If these power plants go through, it's done.
Yeah, and because once they go through, you're not shutting them down.
No, you're not shutting them down.
No.
Fossil fuel companies are blaming the lack of reliable renewable energy investments on long-term permitting processes, which they're not wrong. Data centers can be built in 1 year, okay? But it can take 5 years or longer in order to be able to connect renewable energy projects to the grid, and decades if you're trying to build these long-distance power line connectors.
Yes.
And a lot of that is because of the long permitting process that exists at the federal and a lot of state levels.
Totally.
Nationwide, only 251 miles of high-voltage transmission lines were completed last year. This number has been declining for over a decade. When the opposite needs to happen if we want to survive.
Yes, desperately. Like transmission, to be clear, we talk about this all the time as well, but it is our number one constraint as far as electrifying the grid or transitioning it to renewables. So the fact that number keeps going down because there's more and more red tape to transmit energy across state lines, it's killing us.
The fact that that's the hurdle is insane to me.
Yeah.
That's the hurdle. You're saying that we have a lot of the tech, we have all the money, but you're telling me that some NIMBY in the middle of Connecticut doesn't want to see a transition line through their backyard, and it's stopping us from saving the planet?
Yeah.
That's where we're at? Get the fuck out of here.
It's terrible. I mean, this is happening. I don't know if you know, this is happening in New England, in Massachusetts, right? Maine has gotten in the way of us importing clean energy from Canada because apparently they don't want a transmission line going through their land, which why we don't know.
Unacceptable.
Yeah.
It's totally unacceptable.
It's crazy.
There's also an aspect to corporate greed with this. It's easier for these utility companies to make money off fossil fuels, but regulators need to be fighting back against this, and it looks like they're going to try to at least.
Yeah.
And this is when I say, hey, listen, I'm all for some bipartisanship, okay? Texas is the one state that is keeping up with demand across the country.
Yep.
And why is this? It's because Texas has streamlined their permitting processes. They are allowing wind, solar, and battery projects to get built and connected faster than almost anywhere else. And they have zoomed past California to lead the nation in large-scale solar production. So whatever Texas is doing in regards to this, Texas does a lot of things wrong. They do this right.
Yes.
And the rest of the federal government needs to learn from Texas right now and pass a permitting reform bill that's going to be able to get these green energy projects in the ground and connected to people's houses as fast as possible.
Totally. Absolutely.